And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. Very exciting show coming here for you. I'm Bob McDonald, and with me, my faithful co-host who puts up with all my suggestions on Fridays, Jimmy Lemke.
Hi, how's it going? I'm around. I'm here. I'm
Nice.
still alive.
Yeah, especially after last week, man.
Man.
And Jimmy is at Panther U, and if and be sure to follow the Horizon Roundtable Twitter account.
Yeah, we actually have like our own Twitter account now, so
we do. So you definitely want to, you definitely want to pay attention to that. At Horizon RT. Definitely some things going on there that we're looking probably to ramp that up a little bit more. So, like I said, Jimmy, very exciting show this week. We have Chris Schutte from Mid-Major Madness on today. Chris, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to join and ready to talk some Horizon League basketball.
Horizon League basketball,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And Jimmy, I got to say, I was really excited because Chris is very well versed in IUPUI, and I was really excited to talk about that. And then this week happened.
Well, there's nothing wrong with talking about IUPUI, but if you want to get into just my mess, you're more than welcome to.
Oh, that takes priority because you were really fired up about it this week.
Yeah, I was fired up about it, but I'm like, the more I get into it, the more I realize that like, I'm really just, I'm just gonna lose more and more of my sanity if I continue to just keep getting just completely bothered by what should be just the norm by now.
So for those of you who are not aware, on Monday, Jimmy, you want to mention because it's funny. We last episode we talked about transfers kind of being the norm now, and then we post the podcast on Monday morning and Monday afternoon. 3 Milwaukee players announced their transfer.
And it wasn't just 3 Milwaukee players; it was the 3 best Milwaukee players. That was the part that really bothered me.
Yeah. And for those of you who were not, and Jimmy, I'm sorry, for those who probably didn't catch that news.
Yeah, Bryce NZ, Brock Stull, and Jeremiah Bell, all 3 of them starters, announced their intentions to transfer. Now, just a small little bit of background. Jeremiah Bell was one of Laval Jordan's first and only recruits of his only recruiting class for Milwaukee. Bryce NZ never played for, but was a Rob Jeter recruit who was convinced by Val Jordan to stick around. He was quite impressed by Laval Jordan. I don't think he was quite as impressed by Pat Baldwin. And then Brock Stull has actually just been, a team player for. I think Brock's been there since I was in school, like 8 years ago. He's been around. He played for Jeter. He played for Val. He played a year for Baldwin. I mean, that's the first
now, if I'm not
3
mistaken,
years
of the 3 transfers,
career.
Brock Stull is the only one that is a grad transfer who has immediate eligibility, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, Bryce NZ does not have. He's going to be a 2-year guy, but he's going to have to sit out. And Jeremiah Bell's going to be a 2-year guy. He's going to have to sit out. Now, Bryce NZ was a guy who had. We were recruiting against some high majors, and then he had some problems with his knee in high school, senior year. So we actually got a chance to get the kid because. All these his doctors telling these coaches, he's fine, he'll be fine. It was 2 injuries on the same knee, so people were kind of wary about it because they thought it was a thing. But it was both of they weren't basketball injuries or sports injuries. They were both injuries that happened on. They were kind of freak injuries. Like it was like one was like him twisting it as he was like carrying like a heavy load downstairs or something. So it had nothing to do with basketball, and it really wasn't going to affect basketball once the injury was over. But Jeter and his staff were like the only ones that, or at least the best ones in Bryce NZ's mind, that were willing to continue looking past it. Now Brock Stull was a Duffy Conroy find recruit out of Chicago suburbs, so he should have gotten some attention, but for some reason, whatever reason, he wasn't. He's just a heck of an athletic kid, and he's a good kid, and he's put up with a whole lot, which makes it just so surprising that so close to the finish line of his collegiate career, he'd be looking to move. And what kind of bothers me with that is that after all the business surrounding the postseason snub and the Jeter firing and just all the Amanda Braun stuff, and I really didn't even want to say her fucking name today. I just didn't, and following all that stuff, and then really buying into LaVall Jordan, he had to get into a new coach. And when Pat Baldwin was hired, or really before he was hired, I talked to a lot of coaches. I talked to a lot of Division I, Division III, some JUCO guys, D1 assistants, just talking to a bunch of different people to get an idea. And a lot of the people were saying, he's a really great guy, but I don't know if he's like the right coach. I don't know if he's a guy who should be a head coach. He seems like more like the jovial guy to get you around. Well, it sounds like from the rumors is that he's not so much the jovial guy for to the players. The rumor that surfaced on the message boards and has I can't say confirmed, because everybody I've talked to on it was not first. They're all secondary sources.
A guy who heard from a guy who heard from a guy.
Well, no, it wasn't a guy who heard from a guy. I'm talking about like the players involved, like their roommates.
Oh.
Like their roommates, their friends, people who are, all about the program were, Jeter guys, and then and then Jordan guys, and then Pat Baldwin comes through, and the players are not as responsive to him. The rumor that surfaced on the message board from a different poster was that Pat Baldwin called them in over Christmas. I don't know if it was on Christmas or one of the days around Christmas, but he called them in because he needed them to do. He told them that they had to show up for practice, and generally they were not terribly happy about it.
Sure.
Which I mean, I get it. They're kids. It's something they want to be with their families.
Mm-hmm.
He when they show up, all he has them do is sign a sheet of paper. I don't know what the paper was about, but he had them just sign a sheet of paper. And one of the kids didn't show up because he was not in the state. He was already back to his family. And that kid actually ended up getting suspended for a game. Looking back, it looks like it was Jeremy Johnson. There was no announcement or anything by that. Jeremy Johnson is a kid who announced his transfer a couple weeks ago. Now, these three transfers from Monday are actually number 3, 4, and 5 for Baldwin, because point guard sometimes starter August Haas and Jeremy Johnson. I want to say this, like,
what does that do
something,
if you have that kind of, even beyond that, what does that do to a program when you have so much turnover? I mean, I get the
turnover is one thing. I don't think that the Christmas thing was a big deal, because the kids complain about it, but I'd say to these guys, like, this is something that happens in Division I a lot. I know of Gary Waters doing stuff like that. I know of Harry Watson doing stuff like that. I know of Ron Hunter once did that back at IUPUI. There's everybody's done everybody's done things like this, and not everybody, but Jeter did the same thing.
Maybe
10
Gary
years
Waters
ago.
isn't the best example because he had people transferring out of his program every year. But no, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's just it's one of those. I think that part of it is, it is the nature of the beast in college basketball, but to have.
It wasn't
all
for
those
us.
Guys.
It was not a thing for us until March 2016. Transfers were not a problem for Milwaukee.
No,
they lost 2 players, Justin Jordan and Jaquan McLeod, to leave. Justin Jordan left in November of the 15-16 season. He was pissed that he wasn't starting point guard. Now, just to give you an idea, in 2015-16, our starting point guard was Jordan Johnson, who finished the season second in the nation in assists to Kay Felder. There was no way that Justin Jordan, I don't care who your uncle is, was going to be starting over Jordy Johnson. That just wasn't going to happen.
No, it wasn't.
The other kid that left was Jaquan McLeod. He was he left the program. He was kind of annoyed because he thought that he was going to be like this. He figured that by looking at the talent, he was never promised it, but he figured that he was going to end up being the centerpiece of the program. And it's like, there's Tybee and Springs and stuff, like your time will come, but you're just sit tight. Well, he went home. He spent a couple months at home in the beginning of the January, February, February, March time. He ended up he made good with Jeter. He made good with the staff. He made good with the players. He was probably coming back. But since that firing, and it was more than just the firing. It's just been a revolving door. And yes, there's going to be some turnover. Austin Arians was 75-80% ready to go anyways.
Sure.
Not ready. So he was 75%, 80% coming back. And then Jeter, they screwed him out of the Amanda screwed him out of the postseason. He was at least halfway there, and then all of a sudden now he's like, okay, well, what's the reason to stick around? I got my degree. I'm gonna go on. Yeah. All these guys had to deal with, different stuff from the program, and eventually it just becomes, well, what the hell is it for? Stability. There has to be stability in the program, and through the revolving door of athletic directors, Rob Jeter was that stability. Whether or not he wasn't achieving at the level that fans wanted, and he wasn't achieving at the level that would have let him, would have had the Amanda Braun want him to stick around. So he had to go in her mind, but he was a stable force. The LaVall Jordan thing was just. It kind of just, it sucked, but it was what it was. And then, just the Pat Baldwin thing, I think, he came in, and I don't think Pat Baldwin really made a concerted effort to win over the guys that were there. I think he kind of wants his own players, which a lot of people want their own players, but
sure.
We also, in Milwaukee, we saw this last season where they were basically 500. And they were a couple small things, like the 3-point defense was awful, and they were going to need to replace the Brett Prawl.
Sure.
But largely, this was a team that was coming back. This was a team that was going to be right. And hey, maybe the reboot, because the Horizon League is so shitty. Maybe there'll be room for the team to actually, maybe they could, make a couple runs, and maybe they could actually win and be second in a terrible conference, and maybe, pass there, maybe even have a good enough team to get into the tournament. So Milwaukee fans had higher hopes.
Sure.
For the 2018-19 season. And now it's literally hitting that reset button for the third offseason in a row.
I think the worst part of this is the fact that this happened so far into the spring signing period, where it doesn't matter for Baldwin because he offers 55 people scholarships every offseason anyways. He gives out
scholarship, that's another thing that's happened in college basketball, like the transferring. That has become become a dumb epidemic.
Used to is the fact that
scholarship offers mean nothing anymore. If you get a scholarship offer, it means that they looked at you and they think, hey, we might want you on our team. So if I'm a player and I get a scholarship offer, I don't care. Like all I'm really seeing it as another name to add to the list to get better schools on. Hey, Milwaukee's looking at me. Maybe other mid-majors should look at me
too. And again, this is something that I have to get used to myself. Is that you have so many graduate transfers who have immediate eligibility who are still sitting out there right now, and so you now have a situation where the spring signing period is almost I don't want to say it's almost secondary, because obviously you're going to have plenty of students who are, plenty of student athletes are going to be starting to do that period. But you also have now this graduate transfer dynamic that has just exploded over the last 2 or 3 years. And speaking from personal experience having to deal with this, where you can get somebody who's probably – you can get somebody with quite a bit of experience almost immediately. And we've seen that occur over the course of, especially over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, where, we can complain all the live long day about mid-majors coming in with losing graduate transfers, but at the same time, you also now have the dynamic of those people coming back. Those graduate transfers coming into mid-major programs like the Horizon League, and so it may not be as effective. I think the big thing, especially in Milwaukee's case, is, as you pointed out, the stability of it all. Now you now go from, it's morely a matter of, now you go from a point where you could have competed in the upper half of the Horizon League to now there's a whole crap ton of questions for you.
Well, Tajon Luke is going to have to sit out a year. So there's no, they're not going to be able to have him in the program. So yes, He's a good player, but he's not going to do anything for us here for the first year. And obviously that's a Paris Parham recruit. So you can already chalk one up to Parham for this offseason. But we don't have, but Milwaukee's got, Amanda got her guy. So as far as stability is concerned, ride or die, Pat Baldwin is going to be the coach.
Yeah.
Because this was the athletic director's choice. If you remember last year,
again,
when Laval Jordan was hired, he was not Amanda Braun's choice for the job. Amanda Braun's choice for the job was TJ Otzelberger, who ended up as the head coach at South Dakota State.
And he got Mike Dom back, by the way, for another year.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew that was happening. Dom's a guy who needs another year for
I find that interesting that with all of these things, I know we keep beating this to death, but you still see and of course South Dakota State being part of the Summit League and being a part of, from what I can tell, and I maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it just seems like an overall there are far vaster improvements in the Summit League within the Summit League as a whole than there are in the Horizon League. And
that sentence implies that there have been improvements in the Horizon League.
Yes, and that's.
We should probably talk about IUPUI because I want to clear the air on this. IUPUI is perfectly fine fit for the Horizon League of 2018. That's what we kind of have to realize is that the Horizon League of 2018 ain't the Horizon League of 2011.
It's not even the Horizon League of 2015, man.
Or even really the Horizon League of 2005.
Yeah.
Like when UWM, when we had our, at Milwaukee, when we had our biggest years, 04, 05, 02, 03 to 05, 06.
Yeah.
the conference was not great because, 203 Butler was the only great team. And then they fell off after their Sweet 16 in 03 for a few years. And they just were starting to get back at 05, 06. So like the Horizon League really wasn't a good conference over those years.
Yeah.
If I even say Mike Garland's name, you're gonna start to have like hives on your arm. And you're gonna start scratching. That conference was like 18th or 19th in the country.
It was.
I think the Horizon League was 27th in the country this year.
Yeah, it was.
That's so awful.
And again, as I've mentioned multiple times over multiple episodes, as much hand wringing and complaining about IUPUI that fans had, they finished in the top half of the Horizon League standings this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I said I think they're a pretty good fit for 2018 Horizon League.
In fact, and Chris, you could probably jump in on this one. I'm sure IUPUI is probably kicking themselves from leaving the Summit League at this point.
Well, they're in a unique situation where they are probably taking a step back in terms of quality of the basketball being played. But the Horizon League is just a better fit for IUPUI. I mean, with
geographically, yeah,
geographically, and just in terms of when you have to go out to, say, you make the Dakotas road trip, that takes a toll on the players. And everybody that I talked to on the team, last summer when I found out the news, they said that the thing they were most excited about was just not having to do the travel. And it just takes such a toll on their body. And by the time you get to the end of the season, you're just kind of running on fumes. And I think that this season, they showed that, they're probably able to compete in the Horizon League.
Clearly.
Clearly. I know a lot of the stuff in the preseason from media days had them projected to get last. Some of that might have been, they're the new kid on the block. We don't really know what to expect.
I'm the first to admit that I considered the addition of Panic an ad that was made in panic of losing Valpo.
Yeah,
that I'm the first to admit to say that.
Yeah.
And never really backed off that statement. But again, and I think where we are at now is that, and maybe it's because of the fact, that we are at a point in the Horizon League where, for one reason or another, and it's a lot of different things, coaching changes, transfers, schools leaving the conference, which all of these things have always happened. This is not a new thing within the Horizon League. This is something that's been going on since the 90s, when the group of what was called the Mid-Con, a bunch of teams came in back in 93, 94. And this has been going on forever and ever and ever. But it seems that in this past season in particular, even with adding IUPUI, and they weren't adding IUPUI, and they weren't the anchor of the conference. Not even close. They were in the top half of the conference in basketball.
No, they were pretty good. I'm impressed. I think Gardner's got something going there.
Yeah, I really like him.
Yeah, and I think
I don't know if he's Ron Hunter, but he's pretty good. Ron Hunter was fantastic at getting individual talent.
Yeah,
that's where Gardner is.
And he's obviously
make sure that he can
continued that. Hunter's obviously continued that at Georgia State. I think Gardner has done a really good job of kind of setting a philosophy for how he wants to build a team. He's gonna go after those kids in Indiana, which has just a ton of high school talent throughout the state. Those kids that the ones that aren't going to get, looked at by the Butlers, the IUs, the Purdues. You can find really talented players inside the state that are perfect for the Horizon League. Like a kid like Jalen Minette, he came on really strong towards the end of the season, from Terre Haute. You can find guys that can really score and might not have like the recruiting accolades. They're not going to be 3-4 star guys, but they're guys that can help you win games. And then on the other end, he's kind of carved out a nice space as kind of being an outlet for, those transfers that we talked about earlier. These guys that have maybe played their high school ball in the state or in Indianapolis and saying, hey, why don't you either come finish your career here or come play here? I mean, they just got a guy the other day, Marcus Burke from Campbell, who averaged, 14 a game that played his high school career.
Now, question for him, and I can't remember: is he immediately eligible, or does he have to sit out a year? I can't remember.
I think he'll be sit one and have
Gotcha.
2 years of eligibility.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember if he was or not.
He's a good player. He can fill it up. But yeah, I think he's kind of had an interesting approach to the school as far as just bringing in local kids and seeing what you can get. And I mean, if you can find some talent, I mean, they've got a kid who from a JUCO that was originally at Purdue for a year, Grant Weatherford. They've got Cameron Justice, who sat out this year, who's a transfer from Vanderbilt, who played his high school basketball with Evan Hall. I mean, you saw Ron Patterson last year, originally committed to IU, played at Syracuse, finished his career in his home state. So I think that's a really good way to build a program, especially in this particular,
and
area
that's something
in their situation.
And that's something we have seen in previous years. In Cleveland State being a good example of, when Gary Waters was here, Gary Waters was all about getting transfers, saying, especially the kids who might have been local, said, hey, come on in, come on home. I mean, we saw that you saw that on multiple occasions with Trey Lewis, with John Harris, even earlier than that. I mean, and there was a basis there was, it sounds like IUPUI is doing that exact same thing, which is kind of, as you said, and I agree with you, the best way to approach this. And I think it's a good thing that, and it's something to think about moving forward, especially in the environment we are now in college basketball now, where you have a crush of players who are looking to move. A lot of them, probably, and more now than there ever have been at any point in time. Now it seems.
It hasn't grown as much as people say, but it's still quite a few.
Yeah.
The grad transfers are the ones that have jumped up. And to be sure, grad transfers are still only like 2% of college basketball players, but it's 2% when it used to be like 6 guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Kids are understanding that, hey, they can go somewhere, and I think they should, because
it's funny, it's funny that the grad transfer has destiny. The grad transfer has always been there. It's just when some of the more prominent players in mid majors were getting out. When a Brandon Wood goes from Valpo to Michigan State, you didn't hear as much about it when he did that. But then it gets way more years later, and then you get into a situation where Cleveland State is the poster child about what's going on, what's wrong with this whole thing, which of course, nobody ever wants to forget about, because we have seriously long memories at Cleveland, and I don't know what that except when it comes to LeBron, apparently.
It's the general studies major you have.
Yeah.
It's the general studies major, because you can, there's a path for kids. There's a path for kids to graduate fast at Cleveland State.
That's right.
That's and in a relatively easy way. That's a little difficult to stomach, but it's the truth. It's just how it is.
Sorry,
you have
man.
to figure out a way to get past it. I mean, I'm not complaining. I want Cleveland State to be good too, and I think Dennis Felton's going to be. I was always higher on Dennis Felton than any of you guys were.
Oh no, I know. I'm also the first to admit, not my first choice.
Well, I'm just saying, like he's the guy got ran out of a place that wanted to be more than they were.
Georgia. I mean, he was basically stuck. I mean, he was the guy post Jim Herrick. I mean, let me tell you something. Yeah. Having actually had to study the whole Jim Herrick dynamic, I actually did a paper in grad school about all the shenanigans he contended with. You look at it and you see, but he also understands it. If you ever heard Dennis Felton interview, he understands the entire dynamic and he's totally okay with it. Whereas, before we had Gary Waters, who was, who basically perpetuated the whole woe is me thing for 2 years and ultimately led to him no longer being there. Dennis Felton gets that. And I guess that's probably something we didn't understand initially when he was first hired.
I think Dennis Felton understands the bad side.
Oh yeah.
He's a guy who's been around, and he's a guy who understands what it's like to get close to the spotlight and not get it.
And have to clean up somebody else's mess.
To be sure, Gary Waters was too. But because he that Elite A with Kent State, is cool, and then past that, going to Rutgers, he just didn't have. It's hard to get Rutgers going, just like it's hard to get Georgia going. They are not basketball schools.
That's true.
Rutgers really isn't even a sports school, but don't tell Jim Delaney that.
Oh man!
Yeah, let's not get into Rutgers.
I cannot get. I still can't get past the stupid idea of adding Rutgers over UConn. Like, I don't get it, but whatever. That's fine. I'm not a Big Ten fan, so I'm fine with it.
I could care. Living in the land of Ohio State, which is God in Ohio. I look at it as this perspective. I have 2 degrees. Neither of them say Ohio State on it. I'll watch the Ohio State-Michigan game. Other than that, I don't necessarily care. But regardless of everything, the transfers and it's not so much prominent now as it was maybe last year, beginning of last year. But it seems to me it was kind of last season was kind of a perfect storm of. The top teams aren't as you had Wright State and Northern Kentucky. They were the top teams, and they weren't as. It would have been nice to have a Valpo in that mix, but then you had Valpo leave. You had Wright State and Northern Kentucky, who were still good, still very good. But then you also have an Oakland that underperformed. Milwaukee, which was working with its third head coach in 2 years. You have the Youngstown State and Cleveland State situation where they're breaking in new head coaches. You had a down year for Green Bay. UIC, which to me kind of didn't get going until later.
Well, obviously, because they were done, and they won. They finished. They lost in the finals of the CBI, right?
Yeah.
CBI.
They finished. Yeah, they finished third in the conference, but
that's a big deal, though.
Yeah,
that is a big deal, because I'll say this in my research for, when Amanda Braun was being stupid in March of 2016. She held him out of the postseason because she didn't want she wanted to fire Rob Jeter, and I'm like, well,
sure.
You can fire a coach and let one of the assistants be an interim.
Of course.
I mean, Illinois literally did it right after she said no to the postseason. They went to the NIT after firing John Gross. in my research for that, I found that teams that went to the CBI, CIT that did very well saw themselves maybe not the following year, but 2-3 years down the road, reaching very, very high heights.
I mean,
The
look at
most glaring
Loyola.
example, of
Case
course,
in
being
point, Loyola. Case in
Nevada,
point,
too.
Loyola.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's something that mid-majors have been able to take advantage of. It's more basketball.
Absolutely.
It's more competitive basketball in a postseason environment. It doesn't fucking matter. I'm sorry. I need to stop acting like that woman sitting in front of me, and I'm just,
But you do have a point. The only so you had it was such a strange dynamic in the Horizon League where you had the teams that are near the top. Northern Kentucky goes to get an IT. Wright State goes to the NCAA tournament. UIC goes to the CBI and gets really far there. And then you have this just tremendous drop off. And that's where we were at last season. And right at the bottom, because we have to talk about them again, because they still don't have a freaking head coach, Detroit Mercy. Detroit Mercy still is apparently, if you could tell me what the hell's going on with Detroit Mercy, you are much smarter and more in tune with what's going on over there than I am.
Well,
and apparently anybody else.
I think Carrick Jones is about to be the head coach at Detroit because I don't know.
Still disappointed in no Gary Waters to Detroit rumors. What the hell? Come on.
Perry Watson's still alive, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's gotten to the point
I love
where
Perry Watson, man.
It has gotten to the point where friggin', Tony Paul is hearing rumors about Rick Pitino. And incidentally, the only words that Detroit Mercy has said about this coaching search that make any kind of progress and makes it seem like they're having any kind of progress is they tweeted out, "Oh, no, contrary to previous reports, we're not talking to Rick Pitino." That's literally the only thing they've talked about. And we'll get into we'll be talking to qualified candidates soon. I'm sorry, it's a month later. You fired Bakari Alexander a month ago, and you're still fucking around with it.
I mean, they're still. Detroit Mercy is like Milwaukee.
Yeah.
In that there are a shitload of problems in how the university and athletics communicate and how it works there. The difference is that it's private so that they can get their shit together, and that's probably what they're doing.
But they're not. That's the other problem. They're not. They're just
well, just because you haven't hired a coach, if you haven't got the right guy, it doesn't matter. They're not going to win next year anyways. So, hiring the right coach is by far most important thing. They gut check went for Bakari Alexander because in their minds he was the perfect, the guy who was the alum who was at the high major as an assistant nearby, and it didn't work out.
So
it ended
horribly.
Very badly, but they will figure it out. I would, if I'm a Detroit Mercy fan, I would rather they figure out how to navigate the current landscape of Detroit area basketball by getting the right guy rather than just promoting Jermaine Jackson full time and becoming a full-on bandit program. I mean, maybe that's the direction they want to go. Maybe they want to do that, but I wouldn't just jump to that conclusion. Jermaine Jackson's going to be there a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now if they want him to be. So if you're gonna continue with another alum and just kind of throw away the next year, like you can basically just you can sit on that one for a little while.
Sure.
if I'm the AD there, I'm taking my time. Because obviously Bakari Alexander was the wrong choice. You got to make sure that the next one's the right one. So I'm not terribly worried by it. They weren't going to do crap in 2018-19 anyways. Yes, you want to get a coach in so that they can get everything ready to go, but it's there's always going to be candidates, because for as many coaches as there are, there's only 351 schools, or however many we have. There's only 351 jobs to be head coach of a Division I basketball program. And Detroit Mercy is one that pays pretty darn well. Maybe the guy is not going to make what Bakari Alexander is making, but he'll make some good money, and things should be fine. It's just going to be a matter of doing your due diligence. The wording of that sounds kind of odd to me. We will be speaking with people soon.
Yeah,
that's a little odd, but I would be surprised if they hadn't already been talking to people.
I would think that. You would think they would have already been talking to people already. I mean, it's. I mean, yeah. I mean, I understand the whole thing about taking your time, but I mean, all right. I mean, and maybe because of the fact that the recruiting has.
Well, maybe they have, but they're a private school. They don't have to tell anybody.
And I understand that, but the other, and they're not going to be good next. Yeah, it's pretty obvious they're not going to be good next year. But now you're in a situation where you don't even know who's going to be on the team next year at this point.
How does the Horizon League really shake out? I mean, we should probably talk about that before we wrap up everything.
Yeah, and that's my. Yeah, absolutely.
Is IUPUI going to win the conference?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Northern Kentucky and Wright State are at the top until until proven otherwise.
I wanted to ask you guys about Northern Kentucky. I had John Brandon on our podcast sometime during the season, just kind of talking about where that program had come in recent years. Do you think that Brandon is still coaching there within like 5 years, or two if they're still even in the league?
No,
I don't think so either.
Depends on the success. He's interviewed for other jobs.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw his name getting tossed around a lot this spring, and I think it's only a matter of time before he gets picked off by a bigger school.
Which is the reality for our programs.
Yeah.
I mean, in Milwaukee, we watched Tom Crean go from Marquette, that thought they were a destination, to IU. So if Marquette had a guy went to the Final Four and was in a conference at the time that was major, if not high major, we are definitely stepping stones.
Yeah.
For 10 years. So we all have to look at guys like we're going to lose them one day. And I don't think for Oakland it's a little different, because it's now when does Campy decide to retire? Yeah. That guy's got unlimited energy. I think he could probably coach for another 15 years if he really wanted to. I don't think he'll want to, because the guy's already like 60 or 63 or something.
And he had that health scare last summer too.
Yeah, but it sounded like it was a pretty like a fluke thing. Like it wasn't like exhaustion from being a Division I coach. Yeah, we all have to realize that our coaches are going to be moving on. So you have to get have to make sure that the people who are permanent, your donors, your program, your shareholders of your program, are able to control how the program sets its expectations for an athletic director as far as hiring. Yeah. So an AD, a chancellor, a president, they need to know, number one, that men's basketball is the priority. Number two, how to hire, and number three, you have to have a list. Yeah. You have to have an ongoing list of people that you're ready to bring in for conversations if you need them to.
And I know we talked with Jack Talley from Valhalla Vanguard a few episodes back, and then Chris Hart before that. And the Northern Kentucky fans understand that John Brannon is on the up and up. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where they understand it. They, like Jimmy said, they want to be prepared for the afterwards. And I brought this up a couple of times, and I see it mostly as I would like to see what happens relates to how the order of succession happened at Valpo. You had the Drew dynasty, and then you had one of their assistants come in and take over. When Campy finally does decide to leave, there's a lot of people out of his. There's a lot of coaches out of his coaching tree, even though they may not be currently with him right now, that would chomp at the bit to go back to Oakland to head coach. And there is that infrastructure there. And I guess my question is, and my hope is that when John Brannon does finally decide that he wants to seek life elsewhere, that there is some sort of infrastructure in place within Northern Kentucky where there is an opportunity for either one of the assistants who's been with them for a long time to be considered at the top, or somebody who has had connections with the program previously to come in and step in. And I guess that's where I would ideally like to see all of the Horizon League schools go, because again, as we've talked about over and over, coaches are going to come and go. Mm-hmm. That's the nature of it. It's just a matter of what happens next. If you don't have a plan in place for what happens next, then you're going to be truly stuck. And I think that's the biggest. Yeah. I really think that's the biggest issue within the Horizon League, is because you have the ADs who don't. You have ADs who have not really had that foresight to consider that, and I'm not sure why.
Well, here I will say this: you have to remember who the athletic director is at Northern Kentucky. It's Ken Butoff, who was the athletic director at Green Bay for a very long time.
He was, yes.
Yes, and Ken Butoff is really good at hiring coaches. This is the guy who, when Borseth left for Michigan, he hired Matt Bolant for the women's basketball team, and then when Bolant left for Illinois, he got Borseth to come back. He hired a coach from Michigan. And I don't even think if I remember correctly, I don't even think Borseth got fired from Michigan. I might be wrong. I don't pay too much attention to women's basketball. But Borseth is a guy who kept a program afloat that doesn't have money. Like Green Bay Athletics, the university does not have money. Cleveland State is a relatively large, a medium-sized public university. Where's the enrollment at? 18,000 or so?
17,000, 18,000 now, somewhere around there.
Milwaukee, IUPUI, we're like Big Ten size 30,000 student schools.
Yeah.
Green Bay has like 6,000 students. It is of the 13 UW schools that are four-year universities, it's like third smallest. Green Bay does not have the ability to raise money from students like the other private schools are, or like Detroit Mercy can, because if you need like money fast, if you need $2 million, raising at IUPUI or Milwaukee, we can raise the student seg fee for athletics. You can raise it like $50 over a year, which doesn't really amount to much. At Cleveland State, you raise like $75 a year,
which is like maybe yeah.
It's not much. Students aren't going to notice that. They're not going to care all that much. But conversely, in Detroit, because it's a private school and the tuition's so damn high, you can raise it a ton. But at Green Bay, because it's a public school that has lower tuition, they can't raise. I mean, they literally have to raise the student fees by a couple $100 to achieve what Milwaukee or IUPUI could do for that. So the reason I bring that up specifically is because Ken Butoff was able to navigate that, and he was able to raise money.
Yeah.
From a small market, a tiny market. And that's the other thing. We're all in major media markets, which is less. It's
and
less
now he's
about
in Northern Kentucky, and he's
which is Cincinnati. It's not. I'm not saying that the media market size because we're looking for TV deals in the sense that I'm talking about media markets in the sense that these are large cities with lots of opportunities for corporate sponsorship, and Green Bay doesn't have that. Green Bay doesn't have that, and he was able to do those things.
Yeah.
Ken Butoff is a fantastic athletic director. He is a fantastic AD. And
no argument there.
I trust him completely. When Brannon leaves, I am certain that he will have the right guy for that job.
I agree. I totally agree.
Northern Kentucky is doing things the right way.
Yes.
In that their students, their fans are saying this is what we want to be. They are throwing positivity out in spades. They've got positive feelings in spades. And I cannot understate how important the power of positivity is. You have to have a reason for it. Like, I can't just all of a sudden start being positive because Amanda Braun's the greatest. I can't do that. She's fucking awful. But in Northern Kentucky, they have plenty of reason to be, to be positive, and they're doing it.
And in a conference
where willing themselves,
and in a conference where
willing
you're
themselves into a good,
for positivity, and when in a conference where you're desperate for positivity, Northern Kentucky has it in spades.
They have that arena is beautiful.
Yeah. So
the arena is beautiful. They got a brand new baseball stadium. They got a brand new soccer stadium. They are preparing themselves to not be a Horizon League team.
Yeah.
But when they built those things, the Horizon League was where they were looking to be.
Sure.
And now they can set their sights higher, and that's fine. I want them to be higher.
They can raise their sights.
Coaches. Yeah, raise their sights. Chris, you weren't around for the. Do you remember the slogan, "Raise your sights"? That the Horizon League had?
Jimmy.
They still have it. I thought they got rid of it, dude.
Did they? Oh,
they did. They did because John LeCrone. I'm sure John LeCrone's thinking to himself, maybe we can't really raise our sights anymore.
Maybe lower our standards. I don't know. So with that, and with that happy note, we're gonna go ahead and close out this episode. Chris, thank you again for being on. Where can they find you online, Chris?
You can follow me on Twitter at ChrisShooty3. Obviously over at Mid Major Madness. I honestly don't know what our handle is off the top of my head, but
underscore it is at mid_madness.
Thank you. Yep, you can find.
We got a lot of work on that because of the glorious mascot tournament that Magnus, Cleveland State's mascot, almost won. So that was fun.
That's right. Yeah. And we'll probably have something of that ilk later in the summer. So
all right, great.
So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
And as always, you can find episodes of the Horizon Roundtable on sportshacks.com, HAX.com, and wherever you can find podcasts, iTunes, Pocket Cast, TuneIn, Google Play, wherever. So we'll see you again next week for another episode of the Horizon Roundtable.